You know something really interesting about Esther? It's the only book of the Bible that actually never mentions God. Did you know that? God's name isn't in it one time. And it's actually a literary technique where you don't mention someone and minimize them to, at the end of the story, maximize them. And that's what's done here in Esther. God's name is never in the book, but his hand is all throughout the story. And all of these things that were thought to be coincidences weren't coincidences at all. It was God working. It was God orchestrating. It was God using even evil circumstances and evil people to care for his people and accomplish his purposes. And he did it for his people then. And guess what? He still does it for us today. Look at Romans chapter 8, verse 28. It says this. In fact, how about we all read this together out loud? Can we do that? Everybody outside, everybody inside, everybody online. Romans 8:28, ready, begin. We are confident that God is able to orchestrate everything to work towards something good and beautiful when we love him and accept his invitation to live according to his plan. You see, even though bad things happen in this broken world that God doesn't cause, he's able to orchestrate. He's the sovereign, silent hand that is present even when he's absent. Here's the second thing I want you to remember from the story. God's silence is not indifference. God's silence is not indifference. Have you ever felt like in your life God isn't doing as much as he could? I have, right? I believe in this all-powerful, miraculous God. And there's times where it's like, God, I know you could do something, but why aren't you? Why aren't you stopping that? Why aren't you fixing that? Why aren't you solving that the way I think you should in the timing I think you should? And in those moments where we go, God, why and how was this happening? We can be tempted to think that God is indifferent, that he's uninvolved, he's uninterested. But don't take God's inactivity for apathy, because very often he's working in ways that we do not yet see, that we do not yet understand. Lamentations 3:22 says this, certainly the faithful love of the Lord hasn't ended. Certainly God's compassion isn't through. They are renewed every Sunday. Great, is that what it says? Right? Like, hey, God's faithfulness is renewed once a week when you're here. Monday through Saturday, you're on your own, suckers. Right? Good luck. That's not what it says. What does it say? Like that they are renewed what? Every morning. God is always faithful. He is always loving. Well, how do I know that when I'm experiencing pain? Here's how. You look to Jesus in the middle of your pain. The cross of Christ taking our sin tells us that God loves us. He went so far to die for us. What's really interesting in that story is that Esther says, what? If I die, I die. She had courage enough to step forward, even though she didn't know what was going to happen. But Jesus is better than Esther. The Jesus story is better than the Esther story. Why? Because Jesus came and he didn't say, if I die, I die. Jesus says, when I die, I die. He came knowing he was going to die. Why? Because of God's love for you. And so we look to Jesus in our pain. We look to Jesus in our grief. We look to Jesus knowing that God loves us then and he's coming back again. Why? To redeem and restore all things. Why? Because he loves us now and he's with us now. And then here's the last thing. The last thing the story of Esther I want you to know is this. God works in both the extraordinary and the ordinary. I'm going to invite our band to come out. They're going to lead us in one last song. But just as they get ready, I want you to know something. I wholeheartedly believe that God can still do miracles. Our church believes that God does miracles. I wholeheartedly believe that God still heals. Our church believes that God heals. If you want prayer for somebody to pray for you that you'd be healed, or somebody you love be healed, every Sunday at the end of the message, we have leaders down front. We'd love to anoint you with oil and pray a prayer of faith, believing that you would be healed. But here's the thing. I also believe that many of the miracles God does, we don't see until, like the story of Esther, we look back and go, wow, he wasn't absent. He wasn't indifferent. He wasn't uninvolved. Wow. Many of the miracles that God does, they're in the ordinary, but we don't see them until we look back and go, wow, look how God was moving and look how God was orchestrating. And this week, here's what I want to invite you to do. I want to invite you to believe and have faith to see God do the extraordinary. And I also want to invite you to see him in the ordinary, to see him at your house, to see him with you on your job, to see him with you in the middle of the struggle, whatever that is for you, right? He does miracles and he's in the mundane. That's who God is. And this week, if you're in one of those places where you're saying, God, are you there? Man, I pray you won't give up. I pray you'll have faith to endure. Now, I'm gonna invite everybody to stand, everybody outside, everybody inside, if you stand with me. We chose this last song. It's a great song we've sung for a couple years in our church called Waymaker. This is gonna be our closing song of a prayer of faith. And the reason I chose this song, and I want you to hang with me just for the last 4 minutes, okay? You can do it. Here's why. Because the chorus of this song says, even when I don't see it, you're working, the bridge. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. And I don't know what you're going through, but God does. I don't know if you feel like God is indifferent to your hurt, to your pain, to your struggle, to your financial stress, to the problems in your marriage, the problem with your child, whatever it is that's going on. And today I want you to be filled with hope that God does the extraordinary. Let's believe and pray for that miracle. But he's also with you in the ordinary, working even when you don't see it and understand it.